Digital transformation requires a significant change in how a business operates. More commonly, today's leaders mainly seem to focus on short term benefits, which may not be aligned to the long term strategy, thus creating a struggle to prioritize initiatives for achieving potential business value gains. Customer expectations are changing rapidly, competitors are moving faster, and technology continues to evolve at an extremely fast pace. Now, when we see the journey of digital transformation, we find that most of the discussions revolve around technology products and frameworks. However, service providers are a key enabler of the digital transformation journey. Yet, we do not see much discussion on this very thought provoking subject. The DevOps India Summit and TechStrong Research came together with New Ways of Working survey to understand their experiences relating to digital transformation. The result of the survey is being shared in the launch of New Ways of Working Report 2022 by Mike Rothman from TechStrong Research and Dr. Niladri Chaudhary from the DevOps India Summit. Let's have a look at these very interesting findings.
Hi, this is Mike Rothman. I am General Manager of TechStrong Research, and I'm excited to be here to really introduce and launch the New Ways of Working Survey 2022 that TechStrong Research and Zalentro and DevOps India Summit have partnered up to produce a report really about how things are changing and how we are really evolving the way we work and the way we interact, how we handle service providers, things like sustainability. We've got lots of stuff to discuss. And I'm pleased to be joined here by Dr. Niladri Chaudhary. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name too badly, Niladri. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Mike. And good evening.
Good evening.
Good morning here,
depending on where you are in the world, since I suspect we have a bit of a global audience here. So why don't we start there, Niladri, which is really kind of the genesis of the report, right? I mean, I know you're doing a ton of work with a lot of different organizations that are going through a variety of different business transformation types of activities. And you've certainly kind of detected and been tracking a number of different trends that we look to really uncover and quantify through our survey report. So why don't you give us a little bit of background in terms of the survey and some of the things you were hoping to achieve by polling 1,500 folks from around the world.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So today we know that everybody is moving towards digital transformation, but it's not just automating today's process. It is about significantly changing the way that people work to give better customer experience, to create value per se. So today's leaders are incented to focus on the short-term benefits, which may not be aligned to the long-term strategy, which is creating a struggle to prioritize initiatives to achieve potential business value and gains. So the leaders needs to change their way of working because IT is no longer a cost center. IT is business. So in this changing environment where customer expectations are changing, where technology is changing, where the competitors are moving faster, it is an extremely fast pace. And we need to look at it from an innovative point of view. Everybody has to think innovation, even the developer, the tester, the operations, everybody has to find innovative ways of doing things so that they can reach the customer faster with whatever they are providing. And the other thing is, people are no longer buying a product. I call it they buy servitized product. Now, Uber does not sell a taxi service. They sell a travel experience. And that's the reason you will find that they are not, or we are not happy just having a nice cab coming to us. The entire journey from the time we are booking the cab till the time we paying and getting out of it is what is required to make the customer happy. Now, most of the discussions around digital transformation revolves around technology, products, frameworks, but there are very few organizations who works by themselves. Everybody works with service providers of different size and shapes. And however, if you look at the various surveys that are currently available, those surveys are focused towards those frameworks and those products. Nobody really talks about how the service provider and the customer works together to deliver value for both customer and the service provider. It cannot be one way. So based on that, along with TechStrong Research, DevOps India Summit came together to create this survey, New Ways of Working, and understand the experience relating to this digital transformation, how the customer and the service provider is doing together. And that's where this whole survey started.
Yeah, no, that's a great background. And I think, again, when we think about kind of the importance of thinking very strategically about your customers, right, and figuring out how it is that you're going to solve their specific problems. And I think that Uber example is a great example, relative to really kind of changing the expectation of customers, right? You have to have that innovation mindset, as you mentioned, and you really have to be willing to devote the funding and the time and the resources to ensure that you're focused on that innovation. That was one of the top line findings of our survey, is that many companies, again, they talk about the fact that they dedicate time to innovation, right? But then when you ask them how much time, it usually is, I think what we said, 70 odd, some odd percent was less than 25% of their time dedicated towards innovation. And as you mentioned, innovation is really the lifeblood of the organization. Innovation is what solves customer problems. Innovation is what, kind of creates competitive advantage in the market. So is that enough, right? Are we spending way too much time on kind of those legacy, kind of think about, kind of handling a lot of our technical debt, right? If we want to use technical terms from that standpoint, right? Paying down our technical debt and not spending enough time really focused on what's new. So I thought that was a very interesting finding that came out of came out of our research.
That's right. The idea is that if we are looking at innovation, we have to look at it end to end, not just coming out with new features. It's about how we are doing things. And innovation has to be there from the customer side. Innovation has to be there from the service provider side. So the other thing that we came up in the survey that came out was that are service providers really strategic partners? Are they really looking at creating value? But what we got was they are more enablers. Customers gives them that strategy, they execute it. And a lot of times they are not ready to be able to contribute towards betterment of the business's value. So that's really an interesting point. I mean, even though we thought that they are contributing to the outcomes of the business, but are they really doing it? The survey shows otherwise.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, a lot of it just gets back to, I don't know, we kind of call it the not invented here syndrome, right? In that, kind of a lot of these companies come at it from the standpoint that if it's not my idea, it's not that interesting. And we're just looking at a lot of these service providers as a means to an end, right? To get the work done, as opposed to help plan out the work, help really define what that strategy should be. And as we were discussing before, it's a shame, right? Because service providers have a lot of viewpoints and perspectives that some companies may not have, right? You take a typical, global service integrator. They're working with, many companies of very large scale. They're seeing a lot of different trends. They've worked through various different transformation efforts, and that can make a difference, right? That brings a broader perspective, a diversity of thought that is hard for a singular company to really bring to the table. So it does seem a little bit short-sighted that folks would kind of treat, again, service providers as in effect a body shop, right? Just give me some bodies, help me, kind of meet the needs and build the systems, right? But I'm not that interested in your strategic opinions relative to, kind of where we should be going. And that seems to be a missed opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, depends on how much we are open to each other, how much we are trusting each other. Because if you're on the other side, what we also saw is that very less percentage of the customers are looking at while they are looking at the service providers to be strategic. On the other side, if you look at the service providers, they have the technology knowledge. Are they forthcoming with their knowledge? Are they telling the customer, hey, something is coming up. Why don't you start thinking from this innovative point of view for your next step? But they also want to hold on to that. And that's also, we saw that around more than 40% is not looking at, the service providers are not looking at sharing it. What is interesting related to this is, like many other surveys have shown, here also we see that one of the biggest challenge for everybody is the skills shortage. And here also we see that skills shortage is there. Like as you just mentioned, that a means to an end is your service provider. So I don't have skill. I am not able to do certain things. I am going and handing it over those jobs to the service providers to deliver. Does it really make sense to do it only because you don't have the skills? What are we doing about skills? Even about skills, we are still going with traditional, we see from the survey, the certifications, the trainings, structured trainings. But we talked about innovation first. So here also we need innovation. We need to experiment. And that's why in the world today, we know that there is hypothesis-based development. Organizations are coming together with working with the customer collaboratively for coming with a solution. But if you see the survey does not show that. The survey still shows that it's not about the various innovative ways, the experimentation. Very less time is given in experimentation.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot more is still on that traditional structured type. Now, the point is, if we are changing, if we are not innovating, structured means whatever we already know and we do whatever it is. But today's situation is we don't even know what is happening. It's evolutionary. So we need to have time for experimentation. And that's
we do.
Skill shortage has to come out and through more experimental ways. And that is the DevOps third way, if you look at it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I can't speak for you, Nalagri, but I can tell you that, I learned a decent amount, kind of taking classes and, getting the foundation, but I didn't really become proficient in whatever it is that I'm proficient in, which again, 20 years after 30 something years, you lose track of the time, right? 30 something years after, kind of studying in university, right? It's all been kind of my practical experience, right? And when you talk to technology professionals, they're really not very good when they get out of school, right? Because they've just focused on the theoretical, right? Maybe they did some labs, but until you get into an environment and really start working and figuring things out, it's very difficult to really apply those skills that you are gaining. So this idea of building in time for experimentation, letting folks learn. And, one of my management techniques, right, is manage by outcomes. Right? Because again, there are creative folks that we have, again, whether they're, internal resources, whether they work for a service provider, they're creative resources, and they should be given the leeway to try to figure out how to solve the problem in the best way they can figure out, as opposed to me or any leader, kind of dictating, no, it has to be done this way. We're not, you're not allowed to divert, from that perspective. Again, you undermine the creativity of your folks. So again, a lot of these tactics that we're talking about really have to fit into not just the new way of work, right? The new ways of working that we're talking about here, but a lot of the specific frameworks and structured ways we're trying to provide the basis for innovation, right? And that kind of brings us to some of the frameworks, right? Whether it's DevOps or DevSecOps or, some of the other, mechanisms that folks are using. Open source software is another thing we look at in the survey. In terms of these new ways that kind of, really kickstart innovation, provide that platform and that basis for us to, start developing technologies in a much more agile and quick way, like fast, increase the velocity of how we're building and shipping, software and value to customers, right? So I think that there's obviously some interesting perspectives that we can bring forward about, kind of where DevOps really is. It is the DevOps India Summit, right? So I'm sure you have some opinions about, kind of uptake of DevOps and the integration of DevSecOps and some of the other frameworks that customers are thinking about.
Yeah, that's interesting about frameworks, because what we see is from the surveys that everybody talked about at least a couple of different frameworks being used, whether it is agile frameworks, whether it is DevOps, DevSecOps, SRE, Lean. SRE is still a long way to go, as we see. DevOps is there. However, if we look at it, this comes out from our analysis is one, why so many going together? Because the objectives, the end objective is same. We are trying to address the same business goal. So this brings 2 points. One, and if you look at also the transformation initiatives, how it is triggered, we see that it is operational improvement, which is more rather than something else. And they're like value creation and business goals, which means that the business goal, the strategy, and the execution is not aligned. Somewhere it is losing the connection. And number two, what I call it, there's a lot of framework silos being created. Each framework people are holding on and trying to do that, while the objective of everything was same. And if you see the other parts of the result of the survey, while people are talking about DevOps, DevSecOps, the new ways of working, but if you see the time that is being spent, the way that things are supposed to do, like in security, if we are looking at DevSecOps, security should be baked in the entire pipeline. We don't see that. We see that tools is the most important. Security training is not that much yet. Security KPIs are not that much yet. So all those brings in the point. Even if you look at the normal KPIs, we don't see customer-oriented KPIs to be much. People are talking about, yes, we want customer experience, but are they really looking at, when you correlate the different results between the questions, we don't see that some of the claims substantiated by the activities. So maybe we might think that we are doing it, but the details doesn't show that.
Well, everybody's got a different perspective, right? I'm, what do they say? 80% of the people are in the top 50% of performers, right? So, you have folks that certainly have a little bit of an inflated opinion about what they do. And, and again, that's just human nature from that standpoint. But I also think it ends up being a cultural evolution that's required. Just adopting any of those frameworks, whether it's lean or, a variety of different DevOps things or SRE. Maybe we'll have the India SRE Summit next year, right? As that continues continues to move forward. I'm kidding about that. We love the DevOps, India Summit on that. But, I mean, I think we're along the lines of that cultural, type of requirement, right? Integrating security into a lot of those motions is an unnatural act for a lot of these organizations. They're just not used to doing that. They're not interested. It's like, oh, security, they just tell me no. They're not going to allow me to do stuff. They get in the way of me shipping code. And it's really about, again, delivering that value to customers. And if you endanger and put the customer's information or the intellectual property of the organization at risk, are we really delivering that value? Right. So again, we have to kind of take a step back sometimes and really focus on, what are we trying to achieve here? And that gets back to incentives, right? And a lot of these, and I think that was the first thing you started with, Aladri, right? Kind of the incentives are much more aligned towards short-term success, short-term results, and not long-term value accretion to customers, right? Not long-term and really in an investment and innovation mindset that, creates a situation where these organizations are, really built to, in a sustainable way, deliver, innovations that make a difference for customers. And I think that's kind of what a lot of what we were trying to get at with the survey was really to isolate, kind of some of these discontinuities in terms of what people think they're doing and what they're actually doing, to point out that we still have a lot of work to do, right? Our work is not done. We have a lot of work to do to get folks.
And one interesting point that came up was we are all looking at open source. We see from the survey also many organizations, a good amount of organizations are going towards open source. But what we see lacking from the survey is that who is contributing towards open source? If we see that most of the people contributing, around 40%, I think, are individuals. It's not the organizations which are motivating, incentivizing their people to contribute towards open source. But if we really have to use open source, we need everybody to contribute towards the open source. We see everybody looking at cloud, multi-cloud. Great. But we also see a couple of situations, call-outs that has happened, which is very, very few, or it's one of a kind. But it's interesting to keep a track for our next survey next year. Are people really moving with multi-cloud, or they are also going back to single cloud because of whatever complexity or whatever the reason is? We need to dig that, and that's a point that we have to keep it as a list for next year to find out.
We'll take a note to check back on that one. I mean, I can tell you in terms of practice, right? I mean, I've spent a large part of the last 10 years, working with organizations on their evolution to cloud prior to joining TechStrong Research. And I can tell you it's very, very complicated to have to manage multiple clouds, right? We kind of say it's hard enough to be good at, kind of one cloud platform to be equally proficient at multiple cloud platforms, especially given just the general differences. I mean, fundamental structural differences in how you have to do things in different clouds. It becomes very, very difficult. We do see folks continuing to use, for very targeted workloads. Right. So Google Cloud tends to be, specialized in machine learning, right? Azure specializes in, supporting .NET and existing applications, AWS for, some of the more advanced, builder type applications. And so you do see them, kind of focused on that way. But most organizations do have some kind of primary cloud that they go with. Again, it's due to the complexity really of having to try to learn and maintain skill sets across those different, kind of cloud platforms. And again, that gives you the ability to focus more of your effort on, really customer facing or customer surface value as opposed to just, keeping the thing up and running. Right. So that kind of gets back to how you allocate your resources as well.
All right. And one more additional point that we had in our survey is that We have to give back to our planet. We have to give back. And that is about sustainability. While a lot of the organizations, I think around 40% said that they are having a strategy for sustainability, but a lot more is there who are in the planning stage or not even there. And even those who have said that they have a strategy, what we see is more like the hardware related and the application oriented towards the hardware efficiency kind of things, but not looking at sustainability from the point of green coding and architecting green, those kind of scenarios. So sustainability needs to be focused, but as of now, people have started thinking about it, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, you bet. Another thing we'll put on the list to track for next survey. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, brings back to your point of where is the incentive? How is organizations incentivizing for people to start thinking?
That's right.
Maybe that's the point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, to kind of start to wrap things up, Naladri, I mean, I think that we have a number of interesting findings here. Obviously, this is the first of what we hope are many, kind of editions of the new ways of working survey that we're going to do over the next couple of years, just to track many of these trends. But the big takeaways for me, right, are SP should mean strategic partner, right, not service, not necessarily just service provider. I think that's an interesting way to think about really leveraging and broadening the diversity of your thought that's there. I think we have to break down the silos between all these different groups, especially between our service providers and our internal resources, and really kind of treat everything as one team. Right? Allow our employees to innovate, develop, and grow, and give them the flexibility and the room to really experiment and to learn a number of things in the way that they learn, right? Not necessarily in front of a book or, on a Zoom or, kind of in a classroom. And so 5 years ago, we wouldn't even have said that, right? I mean, but now that's certainly a way that we do things. And ultimately, I think it's to really maintain a long-term focus on value, right? And innovation. And making sure that, again, as you're factoring in what transformation means, if you don't keep a long-term value oriented perspective, what are we doing, right? I mean, you're just trying to optimize your technology resources using a couple of, kind of fancy frameworks that other folks have done. It's really about, again, kind of starting with the customer and moving backwards from that standpoint to the point where you can deliver, that kind of value. So those were my takeaways. Did I miss anything on that front? That was pretty comprehensive.
No, absolutely. These are the main points, and I think people can now look at the survey report, which will be available to them, and they can find more also our recommendations on this.
You bet. Well, great. So with that, Naladri, really appreciate your time, appreciate your help and your participation in the survey. As you said, it'll be available to those folks at the summit today. And with that, we'll see you next year when we do this, when we do the survey again.
Yes, I'm glad to be partnering with TechStrong Research for this survey, unique survey, which is for the first time being done. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Naladri.